Hi guys, my name is Xiao. I started playing Magic the Gathering, this card game, about 20 years ago. And back then the newest sets were 7th edition and the Invasion block. And I was just a kid in grade school. Magic just got into China about 2 to 3 years ago. Money was definitely the biggest problem if you want to play Magic back then, because China wasn't as rich as you probably get it. Basically, $400 a month back then was pretty respectable income, and a pack still costed $3. And as comparison, my allowance for the entire month that's $3, one pack, and that's it. And I would say there's definitely a limited number of people that's gonna play it. The reason I can get into Magic the Gathering is because, of all people, my grandpa got me this 7th edition starter set one day. I think the reason he bought that was Magic back then was promoted by the Chinese government as this brain training sport. Basically, it's like one of those toys you buy for your kids, and they'll play with it and they'll get smarter and hopefully they'll have a brighter future. And I guess that's why he bought it for me. Another reason was Magic was kind of sold to him as this investment. Basically, you would buy the cards and you will keep them and they will appreciate in value. And let me show you some of the things he collected. Here's my Darksteel set. Back then we were collecting single sets. You can see this is a white, blue, black, green, no, that's red, and green. I have every single card in Darksteel. I think there's one card that's missing. This one. That's Panoptic Mirror. I don't think it's worth anything, but for some reason it's missing. You can see the swords. Original swords are pretty ugly. Anyways, that's the entire set. Right, let me put it back. And that's how I got into Magic. I didn't have anyone to play with, so I kind of had to read the rule book and just imagine how the game would play out and kind of have two decks, and it's just me against myself. But I eventually got the hang of it, and I really liked the game. I played some competitive games back then. I had this Red Green Fire Yawimaya deck. I really liked it. It's blazing fast, at least by the standard back then. I had to trade a lot for it. I never had 4 Birds of Paradise, and I just had to put in some other card instead. Magic back then wasn't nearly as expensive as it is today because there's no mythics. Still, $15 for one copy of the best card in standard was a lot, as you can probably. So I never really got into competitive games. It's just not for me, not for the time, not for China. I spent a lot of my time playing casually. When Odyssey was in standard, I had this Battle of Wits deck. If you didn't know, Battle of Wits is this card that you have to have more than 200 cards in your library to win. Normally you have like 60. And basically the story behind that is just one day I was looking at this card, I was thinking, this is ridiculous. I need to make a deck out of it. And I'm gonna actually play it with people and see how they react. And basically I just put in everything I liked. It turns out what I liked is big creatures, ramping, and drawing cards, and counter spells. I was kind of a Timmy back then. After I made that deck, I brought it down to a local game store and played with other people and actually won some casual games. And after that, I was known as the Battle Wits guy for many, many years. During the time of Mirrodin, I made this deck with Darksteel non-creatures in an affinity shell. The thing that deck was trying to do is use this card called March of the Machines. It turns all my indestructible Darksteel non-creature artifacts into indestructible creatures, and I can overwhelm my opponents with indestructible creatures, and there's nothing they can do about it. And that deck was pretty budget friendly because it wasn't in the meta. None of the cards I was using was really that expensive. I just used whatever I have, and it was fun and interesting. Actually, just come up with something under the constraints of whatever you have, and that's how I found I like doing that. And I also like making decks with a theme. Like I would make this equipment theme deck. It wasn't a very strong deck, but I had fun building it. apart from the game itself, I also love the art and story of Magic the Gathering. I didn't have a lot of people to play with. None of my schoolmates played it, and so I can only go to the local game store during weekends. So during weekdays, I just spend time looking at the cards, just studying them, reading the flavor text, looking at the pictures. That was still pretty fun. And we had this magazine back in China. That's how you would get information about Magic. It's got the card prices and everything. We had internet. We had a PC back then. Actually, there was this I think there was this 7th edition game you can play with computer AI, and you can fight him. I remember that game for some reason, but I spent most of my time just playing MMOs. And you probably saw it already, this book. And this is how I got into the story of Magic the Gathering. This book is the Chinese translation of, I think, some of the earliest Magic novels of I think that's the Brothers' War, and then the Planeswalkers, I guess. That's what it calls. And I think they also contain part of the Weatherlight Saga. There's 2 of these. I only have one here, but I have the other one back in China. Anyways, that's how I got into the story of Magic the Gathering. And when Darksteel came out, we bought this fat pack. It came with a novel of the Darksteel story behind the cards. And I was so excited, but the novel was entirely in English. And back then, I couldn't speak English. So I kind of just pushed myself through. Like, I know some words. I think I kind of got the gist of it just from the little words I knew from school. I always liked the idea of this game, but I gradually lost my momentum because I had no money and there's not a lot of casual players to play with, because all the players are so dedicated. They are just so much better than I am, and there's not a lot of information on how to become better back then. We didn't have YouTube and social media and stuff, and schoolwork was pretty demanding in China, so that took a lot of time from me. Even though I gradually stopped playing Magic, I would say there's something I learned from it that got carried over into the other parts of my life and has been helpful ever since. I would say the main thing would be how to manage my money. So my dad would often compare me with other kids in the family, and this is one thing he's really proud of, even though there's a lot of things I'm not as good at in the family. Because, for example, I don't want to talk about it. Another thing I got from Magic, I would say, would be the appreciation of these Western fantasy settings, because Magic is kind of my introduction into it. So when I'm playing games like Diablo 2, by the way, and World of Warcraft back then, I was able to reference Magic and get into it, just understand what's happening really quickly. And you have probably guessed from that. I actually got back to Magic a couple of years ago in Japan, actually. That's definitely a story for another day, though. So thanks for watching this video, and I guess don't forget to be awesome.